Hi, I'm Steve Farrell, the Worldwide Executive Director for Humanities Team, and welcome. This program is called One with the Divine. Each of the leaders on this panel are involved in powerful spiritual outreach that is awakening the world to oneness, to love, to compassionate service, and more. Their message is we are all one with the divine, each other, and all of life. They speak about what it is to stand in the shoes of those we call the other. They are global leaders involved in global outreach. They share their messages in churches, schools, workshops, seminars, on the radio, and on television. Most importantly, they embody their message, so it's very powerful. One with the Divine is an important theme for Global Oneness Day, so we've put together this very special panel. I'm going to go right into panel member introductions. I'll introduce them one at a time, and then we'll go straight to questions and panel discussion. Michael Bernard Beckwith is the founder and spiritual director of the Agape International Spiritual Center, co-founder and president of the Association for Global New Thought, and co-chair of the Gandhi King Season for Nonviolence. Michael is a sought-after meditation teacher, conference speaker, and seminar leader on the life visioning process, which he originated. Three of his most recent books, Life Visioning, Spiritual Liberation, and Transcendence Expanded, are recipients of the prestigious Nautilus Award. He and his wife, Ricky, were presented with the Humanities Team 2015 Spiritual Leadership Award. And welcome, Michael, to Global Oneness Day.
Oh, Steve, it's my joy to be with you once again on this.
Well, thanks so much for being here. And next up, Dr. Joan Borisenko is a distinguished pioneer in integrative medicine and a world-renowned expert in mind-body connection. Joan's work has been foundational in an international healthcare revolution that recognizes the role of meaning and the spiritual dimensions of life as an integral part of health and healing. Jo co-founded a mind-body clinic culminating in her best-selling book, Minding the Body, Mending the Mind, and co-author of 13 other books. Welcome to Global Oneness Day, Joan.
Hi, Steve. Nice to speak with you. And hi, Michael. It's always a delight to be with you.
Always, Joan, always. Whether it's on the phone or in person, it's always beautiful.
Okay, and I also want to chime in here. I'm honored to be with each of you on this panel. Truly, you are both extraordinary spiritual leaders, and which is, of course, the subject of this panel. So we're going to just jump right in because we've got a lot of ground to cover. We're going to go straight to questions and panel discussion. And Michael, if it's okay, I'd like to direct the first question to you.
Hey, this is Matthew Fox. I had trouble getting on, so.
Oh, Matthew Fox. Awesome. Well, Matthew, thank you. Matthew, I'm going to give you a quick introduction here. And then we're going to go straight into questions. And thank you for being here. Let me introduce Matthew here. Matthew Fox is an internationally acclaimed spiritual theologian, Episcopal priest, activist, and has devoted 45 years to developing and teaching the tradition of creation spirituality. Matthew has reinvented forms of education and worship and awakened millions to the much-neglected earth-based mystical traditions. He has authored more than 35 books on spirituality and contemporary culture. His books are celebrated around the world and have been translated into 60 languages. And let me give you a formal welcome to Global Oneness Day, Matthew.
Thank you, Steve. Good to be with you and the others on this panel.
Okay, fantastic. Well, we're going to jump right in because we've got a lot of ground to cover. And, Michael, if it's okay, I'm going to direct this first question to you. Becoming one with the divine describes an inner pathway toward oneness with the divine that lives within us all. Can you share ways in which you personally take this inner journey?
Well, thanks, Stephen. I think for me, over 40 years ago, I had a tremendous spiritual awakening, and I could see that I was being penetrated by just tremendous love that was beyond anything I'd ever experienced, and a tremendous beauty that I could hardly describe. It took a number of years of integration into what it occurred to me, but it changed the trajectory of my life from psychobiology major at USC heading towards medical school, towards the path I'm on now. And, of course, in the process of integration of that, you cannot sidestep meditation. You cannot sidestep mindfulness. You cannot sidestep being still and contemplating, moving from extrospection to introspection to ultimately transpection, where you're seeing with the eye beyond the eye. So the personal journey from oneness always begins with all of us we're already one with the divine. There's never a moment in which we are not. we're simply doing our inner work to remove the filters that prevent us from seeing this reality and having a direct contact and an ultimate expression with this reality. So my personal journey is more of a contemplative, even though I have a very expressive way of teaching. I'm mainly a contemplative. I'm mainly an individual that practices meditation and prayer and life visioning, and open myself up to being an instrument of service of this divine presence that has my particular assignment loaded and coded within me. So my personal journey is one of stillness, one of service, and one of deep and profound listening, with that ear beyond the ear to catch my individual message that, of course, is universal as well.
Wow, beautiful. Thanks so much, Michael. What a great way to get started. And Matthew, if I can come over to you, so moving from the idea of oneness as an intellectual concept to a living reality of oneness is I would say, challenging for many. How can a person embrace being one with the divine from moment to moment in their daily life while seeing the divine presence within us all?
Well, of course, I think one reason why so many spiritual traditions around the world recommend paying attention to one's breath, and indeed the word breath and spirit are the same words in many, many languages around the world, including, of course, the biblical languages. So we breathe every minute, after all, and so if we really meditate on that and with the breath, we're already one with the spirit, just like Michael was saying. It's already happened. Jesus was saying the same thing when he said, the kingdom and kingdom of God is within you and is among you. And so it's not about tomorrow, and it's not about yesterday. It's about what's happening now. So I think if we were to re-sacralize, to understand how truly gratuitous a gift every breath is, that would be a big part of rediscovering how sacred our actions are every day. I had a dream years ago, and it said to me, there's only one thing wrong with the human species today. I think that statement is quite amazing, because we probably could all sit down and write 100 things that's wrong with the human species today. But there's only one thing wrong with human species today, and that is that you have forgotten the sense of the sacred. So I think that recovering the sense of the sacred, and part of that is quieting down, as Michael was saying. Again, the psalmist says, "Be still and know that I am God." And Meister Eckhart says, "Nothing in all creation is so like God as stillness." So that stillness is important, but also there are the breakthroughs that happen in our experiences of awe and wonder and joy. And Michael himself said he had a breakthrough experience 40 years ago. But I think that breakthrough can happen often. Eckhart says, for the person who is awake, breakthrough doesn't happen just once a year, once a month, once a week, or once a day, but many times every day. So I think as we increase our gratitude for existence, and I think science can really help with this, to realize that we've come 13.7 billion years into this amazing drama we call the universe that's still expanding. This alone should fill us with awe and gratitude every day of our lives. And we should be teaching this to our children, and we should be teaching it in every level of school, and we should be teaching it in our families and communities, and certainly our religious communities, that the real miracle is that we exist. And think of all the beings that don't exist. And it's special that we're here. And so I think that combining practice, and this can be anything from walking in nature or running in nature to sitting and being still, to reading or writing or being creative, or struggling to make compassion happen, to heal, to celebrate, and to do justice. I think all of these are ways that we put into practice this basic realization that the Spirit is already oneness that humans are invited to participate in by even being in the universe, this is everywhere, and we just have to wake up to it.
Yeah, boy, these are the messages of Global Oneness Day, aren't they? What a fabulous start. Thank you, Matthew, and thank you again, Michael. What a beautiful way to get started, and just emphasizing that Spirit is already here. We already are all one with the divine, which to many people is a radical message. Joan, let me come over to you. And, of course, you speak to diverse audiences, very diverse audiences. How do you make the message of oneness with the divine accessible for people?
Well, that's a great question. And my colleague, Larry Dossie, isn't with us today. He's another scientist who speaks of these things to a wide diversity of audiences. And I'm sorry that we don't have his voice. For me, it's a multi-layered question. I truly think that for me, and for all of us, the most powerful message is our own sense of union with something larger. The fact that first thing I do before I speak to an audience is actually ask for the clouds that cover that oneness in my heart, that cover true nature, to be dispelled, and for the universe to speak through me. And then I imagine the light that's there within every single person and make a prayer that for them, whatever the outcome of this presentation or workshop or whatever it is really going to be more of a sense of union and oneness and joy and all of those emotions that together characterize the spiritual. And sometimes what I'm really talking about, if I talk about neuroscience, what's cool about modern neuroscience are things like interpersonal neurobiology. And I just want to credit wonderful psychiatrist and neuroscientist Dan Siegel, who runs the MindSight Institute at UCLA, with really founding the field of what he calls interpersonal neurobiology. And what that says is that it starts with the definition of mind, that it is both embodied within us in our brain and throughout our nervous system, even in our gut bacteria. And it's embedded in all our relationships with everything around us, from other people to nature to what we see in the room around us, etc. And it's such an exquisite definition of how information passes, and the natural conclusion that comes to as I talk about it and as people inquire into it is oneness. And you realize, there really is a unified field of oneness into which we all tap. And then what I often do, depending on the group, because I may be speaking with business people who have really, they may have great spiritual interest individually, but that's not what I've been brought to talk about. I might be speaking even to a group like NASA. I could be running a workshop specifically on how to become a spiritual director. That's much more, obviously targeted to what we're talking about. But I find in every form of language and in every field, there's something that connects people. There was an article that came out this week just about the intuition of people who trade stocks and their ability to be mindful and notice their own heart rate and their own gut feelings, and how that makes it better. It makes them better at picking stocks. And if you look at something like that, you say, okay, what are they tapping into that's larger than themselves? And so for, I think, every person on earth, there's an access point and a place where we understand this in our minds And once our minds get a little bit satisfied, which is what science is very good for, people open their hearts. And so the second part of what I do is I share a lot from my own individual experience. And just being very brief here, I'll wind it up in 30 seconds. I've had mystical experiences all my life for just about as long as I remember, and experiences of divine union. And the portal for that is probably the fact that I've had migraines like Hildegard of Bingen all my life. And once I recognized that I could identify with a part of me that is one with consciousness itself, with that, it sounds so corny, but it is a light of extraordinary love, and that I'm not my body and I'm not my thoughts. And I can, my friend Father Thomas Keating would say that in meditation, in centering prayer, what you're doing is you're watching the boats that float down the river of consciousness, but eventually you're identifying with the river instead of the boats. And because that experience is so ingrained in me, I like to share it with others in ways that are appropriate. And it's my great joy to do that. It's so much fun. I love to watch that, and I love to watch people's eyes light up and their faces soften and their hearts open, because that state is home for all of us, and people pretty well instantly recognize it if you meet them where they are.
Yeah, wow. Thanks so much, Joan, and taking us through your some personal history too, including things like migraines that in this case are working for you. You shared you're not the first to experience something like that as associated with mystical experiences with the divine that you also experience. Also, I love that you shared that you like to first focus on opening the mind, because then the hearts will open.
Yeah, I think
intellectually. Yeah.
Yes, that's exactly right. And you know, Father Thomas Keating wrote a great book called Open Mind, Open Heart, and I thought he's got that going in the right direction. That's what happens.
Yeah, it does work that way, doesn't it? And Michael, I want to come back to you. And of course, as I mentioned in your introduction, that you created the life visioning process, which I know which you train people in all over the world, and it's something that is helping people to really see into their destiny, to see into oneness, and to see into the fullness of the role that they can play in oneness. Can you just share a little more about that?
Well, basically, the life visioning process is one of the modalities that I actually started Agape with. The idea, of course, is not to have business plans and things of that particular nature when we were building a community, but was to establish within each of us a field of consciousness, to be the individuals who could actually hold the vibratory field of a spiritual community. So life visioning process is a meditative transformational process by which we sensitize the spiritual faculties, who are able to catch our vision, to be able to hear the inaudible and to see the invisible, with the awareness that, of course, we don't see because we have eyes. We have eyes because we see. And we don't hear because we have ears. We have ears because we hear, because the form follows consciousness. So there's a faculty that we have spiritually, pre-incarnation, of a seeing with consciousness and hearing with consciousness, the inaudible. So life visioning process over a period of time makes us sensitive to catching the still small voice, catching the spiritual vision that's locked and loaded within all of us, our hidden potential. And then we learn to articulate it. In the life visioning process, we become aware of what we must become in order to manifest the vision. For you cannot have what you're not willing to become in consciousness. So many people try to go out and make something happen or to get something. And in the process of evolving spiritually, we want to become something. We want to become that vibration, that frequency, that field, so that once we become that, then in that field, something will manifest, oftentimes larger and greater than what we could imagine. So the life visioning process is a 7-step program, 7-step modality where we become sensitive to the spiritual faculty. And I mean, I could go on and talk about it more, but it's in a matter of fact, I just came back from Denver, Colorado, doing a workshop on it there at the Light Visionaries Conference. But it's essentially you're talking about a meditative process in which you ask the proper questions when you're in the right condition of divine love, so that you're able to hear, you feel safe. And we all know that the universe will answer any question that you ask, but oftentimes people ask debilitating and disempowering questions. What's wrong? Who's to blame? Rather than asking a question such as what gift is trying to emerge in my life right now? What's the next stage of my evolution? What is God's idea of itself as me? You see, if we become prone to asking empowering questions with the capacity to really listen sincerely, which listening is a lost art these days, listening sincerely, you'll become captured by a message that is perpetually being given, and it's given to us as distinct individualized expressions of God, but the message from God is distinct and it is universal. That means whatever message comes to us is for the highest and best of all. A message coming from the egoic may be good for us, but not good for someone else. And so the life visioning process sensitizes us to that distinct yet universal message that is exactly for us and for the next stage of our unfolding and our evolution.
Fantastic. Well, what an awesome thing to be talking about here in the first panel as we're launching Global Oneness Day. And I mentioned in Michael's introduction, he wrote a book called Life Visioning. So, Michael, of the 3 books you wrote, that would probably be the book people would want to read to understand that process better.
Oh, absolutely. It carries the different stages of spiritual growth, development, and unfoldment. It shows you what stage visualization is in, and then what stage visioning is in. And there's 2 distinct stages of spiritual development that, visualization, you see what you want to manifest, and creative imagination, this type of thing. These are the, beginning steps of metaphysics. And then visioning is you're not telling the law what you want. You're actually opening yourself up to catching an idea that's already within you. So in stage 2, you're trying to make something happen with your mind. In stage 3, you're making something welcome that's already happened. So yeah, that book covers that material.
Yeah, and asking empowering questions. And as you mentioned, that sometimes the temptation is to go to what you call debilitating questions in the wrong direction. So turn it around, asking the empowering questions, and then, as you mentioned, this lost art, as you called it, of listening, of really listening in to hear what God, the divine universe, has to share. So
I call that awesome. Reverential alertness. Reverential alertness is what I call that.
Reverential alertness.
Alertness, right.
Fantastic. Thank you, Michael. And Matthew, I'm going to come back over to you. You've got these 12 principles that you talk about that are part of creation spirituality, and I want to just focus on 2 that really are very much what the theme is for Global Oneness Day this year. The 2 themes for Global Oneness Day are seeing the divine in life, and the other one is standing in the shoes of the other. And your principle number 2 is in creation, God is both immanent and transcendent. This is panentheism, which is not theism. You say God out there. I'm quoting from your material. And not atheism, no God anywhere. We experience that the divine is in all things, and all things are in the divine. And then the second principle you've got here is every one of us is a prophet. Our prophetic work is to interfere with all forms of injustice and that which interrupts authentic life, which really speaks to this whole standing in the shoes of the other. And where we're focusing on justice. Can you talk a little bit about these?
Sure. In some ways, I can see myself kind of echoing some of what Michael was saying, his effort to name what he calls the expression of God and the stages of our experiences of the divine. So in creative spirituality, we name 4 paths, but they are 4 faces for the divine. The first is the via positiva, the experience of awe and wonder and joy and delight, and that leads to reverence and to gratitude. And you might say it's the experience of the God of light, and it echoes what Rabbi Heschel says, that awe is the beginning of wonder. So for me, awe is the beginning of the mystical journey, or what Joan was saying, the experience of something greater than yourself. Awe is always about something greater than ourselves. And then the via negativa is the experience of darkness, and that includes both the stillness and contemplation that all 3 of us have been talking about, the listening that Michael names, and it's about letting go. But it also includes, of course, grief and suffering. That's part of the via negativa too, that our hearts often get opened by grief. As John Macy says, when your heart is broken, the whole universe can pour through. So I think the grief experience is important. I just came back a day ago from lecturing in Italy, and my last event was amazing, and I met this community that deals with all kinds of real problems of people, including parents whose children have committed suicide. You can imagine what a bottom experience that is. It's bad enough when parents outlive their children, but to outlive your children who commit suicide is something else. And I met a number of these parents, and it was so powerful how this community is helping to heal many levels of suffering, and that's just one, of course, a very unique and especially devastating one, obviously. But the via negativa then is a God of darkness. Maestro Eckhart says God is super essential darkness, who has no name and will never be given a name. And I think science's discoveries of dark matter and dark energy and how they dominate the universe, although they really don't know what it means yet, nevertheless, we're moving into a period of what I would call the apophatic divinity, which is the divinity that has no name, will never be given a name. So that darkness is so important. And but we are, as you said, in panentheism, we are dwelling in the divine is dwelling in us. It's like fish in water and water in the fish. And this happens both in the via positiva and in the via negativa. And then the third path is the via creativa, and this very much corresponds to Michael's stages of visualization and imaging, because it is about tapping into our creativity. And in theological language, it's the Holy Spirit that is present in our creativity. Thomas Aquinas says that the same Spirit that hovered over the waters at the beginning of creation hovers over the mind of the artist at work. And of course, we are all artists, just like we are all prophets, and because every prophet is an artist. And so that whole idea that, again, that we talked about earlier, that the Holy Spirit is always with us, and especially in these 4 stages, these 4 paths, and certainly in our creativity, we are co-creating with the Divine Spirit. And then the 4th path is the via transformativa, and this is a path of compassion and justice. And as you say, putting our feet into the shoes of others. It's because compassion is about working out our interdependence, that we are all a part of one another and all involved in one another. And so compassion, both the experience of celebration and joy, is how we share joy, but it's also how we share suffering and what we can do to relieve it. And that's the work that you were speaking of the work of healing and justice, and of course that certainly includes eco-justice. You know, are we really in the feet, in the shoes of the rainforests and the soil and the 4-legged ones that are disappearing at untold rates today, going to extinction? And of course the whole issue of climate change and seas rising, all this is about, is calling us to be prophets and as well as mystics, to be activists as well as contemplatives. As William Hawkins says, the prophet is a mystic in action. So the mystic in us is a lover. The prophet is the warrior who defends what we cherish. And so I think we're living in a moment in time that a lot of people, especially young people, feel called to act, but act out of a deeper place, out of this deep place of listening, out of the via negativa, a place of silence. And so it's not action for the sake of action, or it's not action as reaction, which is the reptilian brain, but it's the action as compassion, which is the mammal brain. And it's like the Dalai Lama says, we can do away with all religion, but we can't do away with compassion. Compassion is my religion, he says. Well, Jesus said something similar in Luke 6, where he says, be you compassionate as your Creator and have this compassionate. So in the Jewish tradition, compassion is the secret name for God. But it includes justice. It's hands-on. It's not feeling sorry for people. It's not about pity. It's not even about mercy. It's about justice in the Jewish tradition, the biblical and prophetic tradition. So I think that kind of is a bit of an overview of how both panentheism works with us and how we work. We move then from the panentheism of the via positiva and the via negativa of the mystical dimension into the work. And creativity is the bridge. The via creativa is a bridge into action. As all the prophets were artists. Some of the greatest poetry ever written was written by Isaiah or Jeremiah and others. So there is this close connection between creativity and action. For example, Gandhi. I say Gandhi was an artist of organizing anger and moral outrage. So it didn't just splatter on the walls, but that it was an effective action, whether marching to the sea or his other action. And of course, King picked up on that too, filling the jails and so forth. It was effective action. It was lassoing the power of moral outrage and anger. So it didn't just splatter, but there was a direction to it. And so the prophet is an artist, but an artist of social justice, and an artist to steer moral outrage into nonviolent work of compassion and healing.
Wow, that's a nice definition of a prophet. Prophet is an artist of social justice, and then really framing here that this action of compassion. Compassion is my religion. Compassion in action, which is awesome. These come back to our themes for Global Oneness Day, and I know this is really the work that all three of you are doing. So
there really is a oneness there, because at these deep levels that we're talking about, the level of contemplation and the level of action and healing, I see no difference between the Buddhist teaching and the Christian teaching and the Jewish teaching and the Muslim teaching too. And so, like you say, we go deep enough, and we're in the common underground river together. But Eckhart says God is a great underground river that no one can dam up and no one can stop. So we have these different wells. We have the Jewish and the Christian, the Hindu, the Buddhist wells, and many others, indigenous and whatnot. But you go down deep enough into your tradition, you find these common fields that we're talking about, both contemplation and action. And that's where we have to move as a species, and move fast, because time's running out for us. So instead of competing with each other at the surface, we should be traveling down the wells that we're part of and meeting in that underground river.
Yeah, I'm into that. Well, thankfully, spirituality is getting more and more focused. It used to be that in any kind of spiritual discussion, it would quickly move into a religious discussion, and then we'd get in trouble. But, as you mentioned, when we can go down to the basis, which is spirituality, then everything, we come full circle. We actually see the foundation of all of these religions, which, again, you all speak to so eloquently. This is a great lead-in, Joan, for you, where we're talking about going down into spirituality, because I've heard you speak about this foundation that is the spiritual foundation to all religions, and you bring in science here as well, where you say where science and spirituality meet, we find optimized life and an awakened world. You actually speak about that, this intersection of mind, body, health, and spiritual exploration. Can you talk a little bit about this?
Well, yeah, I would be completely delighted to talk about that. Thank you. And I just want to say, first of all, how much I'm enjoying this panel. and enjoying your point of view, Michael, and what you've said about light visioning. And everything you've said, Matthew, I've been a fan of yours for many, many years. And I just want to say it's really thrilling to be on this panel. I'm delighted. One of the things, in terms of, I often give presentations on ancient wisdom and modern science. And if you look back at if you look, first of all, what's happening now, meditation, which just in the late 60s, early 70s started to make its way into medicine, has opened up a whole other line of communication. So many years ago, actually in the late 60s, early 70s, I was working with a young cardiologist whose name is Herbert Benson at one of the Harvard teaching hospitals. And he, of course, along with Keith Wallace, who was really worked with the Maharishi, this was in the days of TM, the two of them, Wallace and Benson, looked at the mind-body effects of meditation, and they dubbed it the relaxation response. This was a huge doorway because meditation was a word that was foreign to many people and frightening to many people. There were people who said, hey, don't meditate, you're letting the devil in, and things like that, thought meditation and yoga were not good things to do. But when you began to frame them in terms of self-regulation and health, reducing stress, later on understanding what happens to the immune system when you do these things, how it is when you calm your spirit and you invoke the spiritual positive emotions that you've been talking about, Matthew, like awe, love, compassion, joy, gratitude, peace. Now it's really interesting that this wonderful Harvard psychiatrist, who I'll talk about in a moment, who wrote a wonderful, wonderful paper on science and spirituality, and that's his definition of spirituality, is that cluster of 8 positive emotions. And what we understand now is that when we meditate, and now people are really looking, what are the different types of meditation? Are we constructing something like the ability to be compassionate? Are we deconstructing something like our reified way of viewing the world? Are we developing meta-awareness, as mindfulness and several other kinds do? Each of those has different physiological correlates, and that's very exciting to people. And suddenly you go back to old, shall we say, textbooks of how to tame the mind, like the Yoga Sutras of Patanjali. And the first sutra, paraphrase of it, is that yoga is the stilling of the modifications of the mind. In other words, your mind is constantly spinning out thoughts. We're addicted to the thoughts. The thoughts actually drive what's going on with our emotions. The emotions, in turn, affect the neurohormones we secrete, our fight or flight response or relaxation response. And now people are looking at what happens in terms of genetics and realizing that your DNA is not your destiny, but your belief systems affect what's called the epigenome, and that's the control panel that silences or activates genes. You can go all the way back to Patanjali and the Yoga Sutras and see, aha, when I do these practices or take these different perspectives, my epigenome changes. I change the way my DNA interacts with the world. And this is a bridge that people can really understand. And the other part of this bridge, which I cannot stress enough, has to do with our children and how we educate and raise our children, how we support parents and support parents who really do not have the the financial ability. They don't have the social structures in place around them to really have the kind of bonding and care of their children that kids need. And we begin to realize that if we're all to develop compassion, we need to have compassion for young people, compassion for parents, so that as children are born, those years between 0 and 3 make an enormous difference to who those children will become, because that's when the brain is really laying down frameworks, some of which can be repaired later and some of which can't. And so there we've got the social aspects that are so very important to this. So I would say we've got science, we've got spirit, and it all culminates, as Matthew was talking about so beautifully, in compassionate and wise social action.
Yeah, wow, what a beautiful evolutionary, scientific, and spiritual perspective there that you shared, Joan. And I've got here on the screen people saying, wow, this panel rocks. So wonderful. And I'm going to have to agree with that. Absolutely. You were referencing Michael and Matthew, but I want to bring you into this also, Joan. You're just terrific. Wow.
Thank you.
So amazing. So, Michael, let me come back to you. And, of course, where we look out at today's world, there are so many things that can discourage people. And I'm sure you run into this all the time, where people just feel discouraged looking out at the world, the immigration and loss of life, and with ISIS and the polarity in politics, really in the U.S., all over the world, this Brexit and climate change, et cetera. What do you say to people who feel discouraged and who wonder if one person really can make a difference?
Well, first of all, I want to echo what Joan said. I really appreciate being with Matthew and Joan, who have been tremendous teachers for so many years, and have been greatly inspired me over the years. So I just love sitting with them virtually as we have this powerful dialogue. When we look at all the things that are going on in the world, we have to remember, of course, that we're being bombarded every single day by corporate media as to the worst-case scenarios of the human condition, and that what we're seeking to do, and what we're inviting people to do through their spiritual practice, their study, their fellowship, going into spiritual community, activating their compassion, is we must become the reporters of the new paradigm. And the reporters of the old paradigm are basically reporting what's on the downward spiral. They're reporting on the dissolution of a paradigm that doesn't work, a paradigm that's based on scarcity, lack, greed, limitation, immature economic system that's fueled and funded by a non-renewable resource, so that there's debt already built into the system. It's a win-loss paradigm. And right here on the planet at this time, right now, there is a solution for every single issue. Right now, I mean, whether it's pollution, whether it's energy, the new paradigm already exists. And so what we're seeking to do is to be the reporters of that which is trying to emerge. And everyone in their own way has to find their gifted area as to where they will share and where they will give from the emerging paradigm, and not give up inspiration, not give up hope. Don't go into cynicism or skepticism based on the debilitating news of the lowest common denominator of the human experience. I tell people that we must have a conscious naivete. That is, we must be naive enough to think that we can make a difference, because resignation to evil or resignation to negativity does not carry any courage whatsoever. You don't need any courage at all to just resign yourself to business as usual. Things are always going to be bad. They're getting worse. There's no courage in that. Conscious naivete brings us to the point where, because we're all united on a subconscious and on a spiritual level, if I'm giving from my inspiration, from my creativity, according to my particular gifted area, I'm impacting the whole. And so I tell people that when we're reading the headlines and we're seeing the latest political polarization, the latest thing to be afraid of, that we have to look at those not as the news. We have to look at it as the olds. It's the ruminations of an old paradigm, and that it's really a prayer request for those who are awake. The newspapers give us what we are to pray for during that day. We're not to look at it with their facts, but they're the same facts every day happening to different people. And it's also the same facts coming from a paradigm of separation. So we look at all of that as a prayer request. What is my duty today? What's my assignment? My assignment today is to know that right in the midst of this negative proclamation that I'm reading about, there's an answer, there's a solution, and there is a way. And so some people will rally around, and that may be their gifted area. Their gifted area may be the dissolution of the war machine, or the prison industrial system, or the lifting up of a new medical model that treats people humanely and not just creates industries out of cancer and AIDS and things of this particular nature. Other people's gifted area may be in education, maybe in the legal system. But everyone has to find their area. And it's not can one person make a difference. One person does make a difference in their particular area when they're giving from not cynicism or fear, but when they're giving from that conscious naivete, I am making a difference, you see. To just resign oneself to think that we're going to hell in a handbasket doesn't do anything. And so I kind of lean into those kind of conversations, again, with the awareness that right now, there's a solution to everything. I mean, there's a wonderful technology that now converts the landfills into non-toxic renewable fuel. And the gentleman that has that particular modality and that particular fund lets us know that there's enough over the last 100 years we put more garbage in the earth that we never have to drill for another drop of oil ever again, just based on the conversion of the landfills into renewable oil, a non-toxic fuel. And so I think Sweden has picked up on this, and they're now buying garbage from other countries because they've changed their garbage into non-toxic fuel. So, if you go into every system, whether it's education, medicine, justice, there's already an answer there. But we have to articulate it, and then those who are gifted in that area have to walk in that direction, so that that paradigm is emerging. So I live from a very vision state. I see the possible, and that's where I live every day, so I don't get burnt out with the news of the old paradigm that comes at us with music at 7 and 11 every single day. See?
Yeah, fantastic. Must report on the new paradigm. That's everyone's assignment. And as you mentioned, taking courage. You say there's no courage in just saying, oh, what can I do, and just being a cynic about how challenging things are. I also love making a prayer request for all of those that are awake, and each of us looking for my duty, my assignment, my answer, my solution, my way. That's awesome. Thanks, Michael. And then Matthew, coming over to you. So as we look then at where we are, and we look at answers, perspectives like what Michael shared, I know that's you also turn things around in a positive way. Joan turns things around in a positive way. So are we making progress? Is the world awakening? What do you see and feel? What are you hopeful? Where are you coming from?
Well, I like that definition of hope from David Orr, the eco-philosopher. He says, hope is a verb with the sleeves rolled up. So I think we're talking about work, inner work, which of course this conversation has explored very well, but also taking our inner work into the outer work. And so what Michael was talking about is so real that it's what I call the via creativa, that there's all kinds of creativity bursting now and wanting to come to the fore. One example I give is that in India, as many people now know, they're making cars that run on air. Well, that's pretty interesting. Air doesn't give that much pollution and so forth. So the capacity of our human imaginations is tremendous. And I think this is the one thing our species has going for us is our creativity. So, like he says, turning dumps into non-toxic fuel is an obvious step forward. So there could be an explosion in all of these things, and I think there will be, because the younger generation, I think, is not bound anymore to the old structures and the old news, the old paradigms that Michael was talking about and that Joan is also talking about, that the new science and the deeper and what I would call interfaith spirituality is releasing energy and visions and possibilities and imagination, and I don't think there's really any way of counting at this stage how rapidly this could take off. I think right now it's at the level of seeds and so forth, but I like to think of how the dinosaurs, when they were wandering around doing their thing and went out of business quite suddenly, there were these tiny little shrew-like creatures also running around, and they were mammals, and the mammals have taken over the earth. So bigness is not the last word, and I think a lot of our institutions, educational, political, financial, religious, are failing us today, and it's pretty clear. But they are the dinosaurs, and so we are looking at the new shoots or the new imaginative species that can make new things happen and create new paradigms, just like Michael was talking about. And I'm awfully glad that he introduced the word courage, because for me, courage is the ultimate test of spirituality. After it comes in two French words, a big heart, cœur large. So the question becomes, how do we enlarge in our hearts? And I think the key to that is joy. Thomas Merton, the great Catholic monk who died in 1968, he said he had a mystical experience on the streets of Louisville one day, and he said, how is it possible to tell everyone that they're walking around shining like the sun, S-U-N? We're all walking around shining like the sun, so let's get about telling one another this. And the sun, of course, is so generous, and that's my second favorite virtue besides courage, is generosity. The sun, the entire Earth system runs on 1/billionth of the sun energy every day. So the sun is terribly generous. It's just giving out to give out. And so we can start imitating the sun, and we can start developing our courage. And I think the best way to learn courage is to hang out with courageous people. And I think of some wonderful people I've known in my life who've taught me a lot about courage, and it's in all of us. Courage is not something it's unique. It's embedded in our species. None of our ancestors would have survived without a good deal of courage. And so this building up of the heart, and Thomas Aquinas says, joy expands the heart. So that's how you grow the heart, and that's why I agree with what Michael's saying. We can't wallow in the bad news, or we have to be aware of it. We have to wallow in the what we talked about from the beginning here, in the sacredness of our existence, in the joy of being here. And there's a great line in Aquinas. He says, God is supremely joyful and therefore supremely conscious. In other words, there's a direct link between joy and consciousness. And think about it. Mm-hmm. When you're in a joyful state, when you're in love, the whole world becomes more intuitive to you. You're in touch with that. And today we have to move from our anthropocentric versions of being in love, which is finding a two-legged mate till death do you part, to realize that we're called to be in love with forests and four-legged creatures and oceans and rivers and trees and future generations, as well as poetry and music. One of my lessons that I teach is that you should fall in love 3 times a day. And it is this power of love that sparks the energy and the fire that overcomes indifference or self-pity or any of these other things. Aquinas says that zeal happens from an intense experience of the beauty of things. So I think as we fall more in love with life and its gifts, and we really taste the intense experience of the beauty of things, our imaginations are going to run overtime. When you're in love, your imagination runs overtime. So the creativity will be there to bring about this new paradigm that is so needed and that is beginning to creep around in minor versions today, but it really has to reach a point of tipping so that our species truly moves to another level of its own evolution.
Wow, Matthew, and I love where you started. Hope is a verb with sleeves rolled up. That's one for the refrigerator.
There you go.
Well, guys, I told you this program was going to go fast. Oh my goodness, I would love to go deeper and longer, but we've just got about 3 more minutes here. Or actually, no, we only have probably about 2 minutes, and then I've got I want to close with some things. So can I ask you just to share a website where people can follow your work? Joan, can you go first?
Yeah, sure. It all hinges on being able to spell Borisenko, BORYSENKO, and my website is joanborisenko.com, or you can join the conversation on Facebook, and you have to go to Joan Borisenko/community. That's the page.
Okay, thank you, Joan. And Michael, how can people follow your work?
Basically, they can go to agapelive.com, AGAPELIVE.com. They can live stream my Wednesday evening and Sunday services. I have a meditation service at 6:30 a.m., and then the next 2 services carry the music and the inspiration. The Wednesday night service, the meditation begins at 6:45, and the service starts at 7:15. They can also go to michaelbernardbeckwith.com as well. Either one of those will work, and like Joan, I'm also on Facebook.
Fantastic. Thank you, Michael. And Matthew, how can people follow you, please?
MatthewFox.org. That's with 2 T's, Matthew. And also our alternative worship, we call it thecosmicmass.org. Also there you can find out. But there's a link at my webpage to that and some other affiliated groups, Christian Spirituality Communities, for example. And they're starting a new school now called Fox Institute for Creation Spirituality, and which will offer master's degrees, a doctorate degree, and a doctor of spirituality degree in this tradition of creation spirituality. So that's just starting up in January. So that's kind of exciting. She's got licensed by the state of Colorado for that.
Okay, thank you, Matthew. And wow, again, one of the remarks that came in, this panel rocks, so wonderful. And I know that this listener is speaking for all of us. I certainly feel the same way. What an amazing panel. And thank you so much, Michael Bernard Beckwith, Matthew Fox, and Dr. Joan Borisenko. Truly an extraordinary hour. Let me also thank the enormous listening audience, all of those who registered for Global Oneness Day, also the Global Oneness Day co-creators, all of the people that are on the Amplifield platform listening by phone, webcast, playback, and replay. I also want to thank my colleagues and partners in the Humanities team who've been working for about a year to create this program. Thank you to all of you. If you miss any of today's session for a limited time, you can enjoy a free playback on this program. We post playbacks to the Global Oneness Day website within 24 hours, and we keep those free playbacks up for 48 hours. But also, you can purchase one of the Global Oneness Day 2016 upgrade packages, and then you don't have to take notes, because just like the program here this hour, it's just amazing. So many things that you do want to reduce to notes. You can enjoy all of the sessions anytime and share them with friends. For a limited time, there's a $100 discount on all of those packages. You can learn more on the Global Oneness Summit.org site. You'll see upgrade button at the top. You can click on that to learn more. Next up is our Community Empowerment Panel. It was created by Anna Marie Peters, who's with Humanities team in South Africa. Anna Marie, David Gershon, and Gail Straub are on this panel. It's going to be fabulous and a lot of fun. Also, Nanette Kennedy and Dee Meyer are moderating this panel. You don't want to miss it. Before we begin, we're going to be silent just for 10 seconds to center ourselves in oneness with the divine and each other. We call this a oneness moment. Let's go ahead and begin our oneness moment right now.